Hello everyone, and welcome back to Rules as Written Character Builds. My name is Zach, and on this channel I make character builds for 2024 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, aiming to strike a balance between theme and combat capability. This week, I really wanted to do a build featuring the Mage Slayer feat, so I thought I'd go all in on that aesthetic and make what I call the Mage-Killer. The thing is, if you're going to be a Mage-Killer, you need to have Counterspell. You can go without it, but ending concentration and dispelling magic is only going to do so much. Shutting down the casting of spells in the first place is the best way to stop a caster in their tracks. The trouble is, Counterspell is available to Warlocks, Wizards, and Sorcerers, the big three arcane casters. I don't really want our theme to be an arcane caster who excels at killing other casters, sort of like a mage duelist. I want to feel like something else entirely, something like an anti-caster, a character who is anathema to the essence of magic itself. Enter the Psychic subclasses, the Great Old One Warlock, and the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer. Going this route, we can get our caster antagonistic spells, Counterspell, Dispel Magic, but keep our aesthetic away from magic and focus more on the power of our mind. So, now introducing the Arcane Anathema, aka the Mage-Killer. With these videos, I focus only on features that either play into the character fantasy or are necessary for the mechanical play of the build. For this reason, you'll often see me skip over class features. That's just me trying to stay on course and keep these videos to a reasonable length. So, I want to make this character a walking nightmare to mages, the sort of character that mages might tell ghost stories about around campfires. And for me, the species that catches that aesthetic best is the Yuan-Ti. This species gives us some solid features: dark vision, poison resistance, some species-specific spells, but most importantly, it gives us magical resistance, which grants advantage on all saving throws against spells. This is going to come in handy as we hunt down spellcasters and shrug off their attempts to defend themselves. Now, for our ability scores, if we are going to be fighting spellcasters, we don't want to have any negative mental scores, because failing a single saving throw against a spell could prove fatal. We also want a good charisma, dexterity, and constitution to support our casting and our durability. So let's go with this ability score spread: a strength of 8, a dexterity of 13, a constitution of 13, an intelligence of 12, a wisdom of 12, and a charisma of 15. For our background, we are once again going with a non-player's handbook background, so we can assign our ability score increases and choose our own origin feat. I like the aesthetic of the faceless background. Our true identity is a mystery, and to most, we are simply known as the Mage-Killer. With this background, increase your charisma by +2 to a 17, and your constitution by +1 to a 14. We are then going to be going with the Alert origin feat. When you roll initiative, you can add your proficiency bonus to the roll. Immediately after you roll initiative, you can swap your initiative with the initiative of one willing ally in the same combat. You can't make this swap if either you or the ally has the incapacitated condition. We want to strike hard and fast against these spellcasters, so we can knock them out of the fight before they have a chance to drop their strongest spells. Alright, let's take a look at the roadmap for this build. 1 through 5 will be Warlock levels 1 through 5. 6 through 12 will be Sorcerer levels 1 through 7. 13 through 19 will be Warlock levels 6 through 12. And 20 will be Sorcerer level 8. This roadmap gets us a handful of good invocations from Warlock, as well as Counterspell, before heading to Sorcerer to pile up on spell slots and grab a few more useful spells. Then it's back to Warlock for more invocations and our first epic boon feat, and then we end with the 12-8 split between Warlock and Sorcerer to pick up a second epic boon. And remember everyone, epic boons are feats. They just require level 19 to take. So, as long as we have an ability score improvement at levels 19 and 20, we can take 2 epic boon feats. So, heading into Warlock gets us the following: Pact Magic, the Agonizing Blast invocation, Magical Cunning, Devil's Sight, Pact of the Blade, the Great Old One subclass, the Shadow Blade spell, an ability score improvement, the Counter spell, Lessons of the First One invocation, and the Thirsting Blade invocation. So, at Warlock level 1, we get Pact Magic. This is just like the spellcasting feature, except you get far less spell slots, and they are always the highest level spell slots that you have available for your level, and they recharge on short rests. Since Warlock spell slots are more limited in quantity at any one time, they don't act as your main combat option like a wizard or a sorcerer. Instead, Warlocks get access to more powerful cantrips and weapon attacks, and their spell slots are more like damage boosting cooldowns, like a fighter's action surge. So, along the lines of that first point, we also get our first Eldritch invocation, and we are going with Agonizing Blast. Choose one of your Warlock cantrips that deals damage. You can add your Charisma modifier to that weapon's damage rolls. This invocation works great with Eldritch Blast, because that cantrip makes additional attack rolls as its damage scales, instead of just doing more damage on one hit. Therefore, you'll add that charisma modifier multiple times in a single casting. So we'll choose Eldritch Blast for this invocation. It's now doing 1d10 plus 3 damage on a hit. At Warlock level 2, we get Magical Cunning, a new 2024 Warlock feature. You can perform an esoteric rite for 1 minute. At the end of it, you regain expended packed magic spell slots, but no more than a number equal to half your maximum, round up. Once you use this feature, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. We currently have 2 Warlock spell slots, and we won't get a third until Warlock level 11. The slots come back on a short rest like I mentioned, but in a pinch, a quick 1 minute ritual to get 1 spell slot back is pretty good. We also get 2 more invocations at this point. First, we are going to be picking up Devil Sight. You can see normally in dim light and darkness, both magical and non-magical, within 120 feet of yourself. We are going to be picking up the Darkness spell later on and doing the classic drop enemies in darkness and then attack them with advantage and have all attacks against you at disadvantage combo. Then we're also going to pick up the Pact of the Blade invocation. As a bonus action, you can conjure a simple or martial melee weapon or bond with a magical weapon you touch. Whenever you make an attack roll with the bonded weapon, you can use your charisma modifier for the attack and damage rolls. Additionally, you can cause the weapon to deal necrotic, psychic, radiant, or its normal damage. Once we get second level spell slots, we'll be picking up the Shadow Blade spell. And since this invocation now only takes a bonus action to bond, as opposed to the 1 hour that it previously took in the 2014 Player's Handbook, it can now be used with the Shadow Blade spell, which has a 1 minute duration. Which leads us right into Warlock level 3, where we do get our second level spell slots, and we're going to be picking up Shadow Blade and the Darkness spell right off the bat. Now, this gives us 2 different options for how we want to use our concentration in combat. We can either throw down a darkness spell and launch Eldritch Blasts into the blinded enemies, or we can activate our Shadow Blade and get in close on the combat, making attack rolls with our packed Shadow Blade, using our charisma modifier, and dealing 2d8 plus 3 damage per hit. We also get our subclass at this level, and we are going with the Great Old One. This gives us 2 features, Awakened Mind and Psychic Spells. Awakened Mind lets us choose one creature and open a psychic link with their mind, allowing communication between our character and them for a number of hours equal to our Warlock level. This link can extend across a number of miles equal to our charisma modifier. The most obvious use of this is definitely silent communication between party members, but it doesn't specify that it only works on allies, and there's no saving throw involved. So personally, I like this as a way to torment enemies. Build some solid RP by speaking in their mind and filling them with dread as you hunt them down. We also get the Psychic Spells feature. When you cast a Warlock spell that deals damage, you can change its damage type to Psychic. In addition, when you cast a Warlock spell that is an enchantment or illusion, you can do so without verbal or somatic components. I love this. Psychic is a great damage type, very rarely resisted, so this is pretty on brand for us. Next, Warlock level 4 gets us our first ability score improvement, and we're going to be taking the Mage Slayer feat. Increase your strength or dexterity score by 1 to a maximum of 20. When you damage a creature that is concentrating, it has disadvantage on the saving throw it makes to maintain concentration. If you fail an intelligence, a wisdom, or a charisma saving throw, you can cause yourself to succeed instead. Once you use this benefit, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. Guarded Mind is pretty fitting for a psychic, Yuan-Ti nightmare of a character, and Concentration Breaker is great for a Warlock because it will force those disadvantaged concentration checks each time we deal damage. And once again, since Eldritch Blast shoots multiple beams, at later levels it'll be very easy to force a creature to make multiple concentration saving throws with just one casting with that cantrip. This is going to dramatically lower their chances of holding that concentration. Alright, we're also going to increase our dexterity to 14 with this feat to pick up the +2 modifier. Next, at Warlock level 5, we get 2 more Eldritch Invocations, as well as some 3rd level spell slots. The first spell we want is Counterspell. This spell got some pretty heavy changes in 2024. The target now gets to make a Constitution saving throw, possibly resisting the spell, and if they do fail, they still get to keep their spell slot. That is a bummer, since the old version of the spell just automatically succeeded as long as the counter spell was of the same spell level as the spell you were trying to counter, and they lost their spell slot at the same time. However, now that we don't have to make a roll if the spell is a higher level than us, we just have to get them to fail a save, it is, from a certain view, a little bit better in countering high level spells. We also get 2 more Eldritch Invocations at Warlock level 5, and the first one that we want is Thirsting Blade. This invocation lets us make an extra attack when we take the attack action and attack with our packed weapon. So now we can make 2 attacks with our Shadow Blade. Also on that note, Since our Pact Magic slots are now 3rd level, our Shadow Blade is therefore upcast to a 3rd level casting, and it now deals 3d8 psychic damage on a hit. So that's an extra d8 per hit and an extra attack per action at this level. That's a pretty giant damage boost. Also, since it is level 5, Eldritch Blast is now going to shoot an additional ray, so we're getting 2d10 plus 6 possible damage out of Eldritch Blast. For our second invocation, I want to take lessons of the first ones. You have received knowledge from an elder entity of the multiverse, allowing you to gain one origin feat of your choice. The flavor of this is pretty fitting for a Great Old One Warlock. You know, we're already potentially getting our magic from a elder entity of the multiverse, so this is right on brand. As far as the origin feat we're going with, we're going to pick up Lucky. You have a number of luck points equal to your proficiency bonus. You regain expended luck points when you finish a long rest. When you roll a d20 for a d20 test, you can spend 1 luck point to give yourself advantage on the roll. When a creature rolls a d20 for an attack roll against you, you can spend 1 luck point to impose disadvantage on that roll. This can easily be reflavored as our psychic might, augmenting our rolls, or impeding our enemies' rolls. It just makes us even harder to deal with as an opponent. And with that under our belt, we are now done with Warlock for the time being. We are a fledgling little horror villain right now. We can psychically torment people by speaking into their minds up to 3 miles away, and there's nothing that they can do about it. We can see through any type of darkness up to 120 feet, and we can summon our own magical darkness to surround our enemies to give us advantage on our attack rolls against them. When a spellcaster casts a spell, we can counter it with a reaction, and if they're concentrating on a spell, we can cut through their concentration thanks to Mage Slayer. And then, if they try to turn the magic on us, we have advantage on all of our saving throws. If we do fail a saving throw, we can choose to pass it instead thanks to Guarded Mind from Mage Slayer. We have Eldritch Blast to engage from range, and we have a Pact Shadow Blade to engage in melee. And on top of all of that, we also have the Lucky feat to help us guarantee our hits and hopefully ensure the enemies miss theirs. So, now that we have all that under our belt, let's head into Sorcerer to get some more spell slots to spend and another psychic-themed subclass. Sorcerer levels 1 through 7 will get us Meta Magic, the Aberrant Sorcery subclass, an ability score improvement, 3rd level spell slots, the Psychic Defenses feature, and 4th level spell slots. So, right away with Sorcerer spellcasting, there are 2 spells that I want to grab: Silvery Barbs and Magic Missile. Silvery Barbs is a great anti-caster spell, because whenever they succeed on a saving throw against a spell of yours, you can just make them re-roll it. The secondary effect of it giving advantage on the next d20 test a target creature makes is also really good for our aesthetic, because not only are we impeding their magic, we are stealing some of their power to give ourselves a benefit. I also wanted to pick up Magic Missile, because it works so well with the Mage Slayer feat. Magic Missile creates 3 darts of magic that automatically hit, and they each deal 1d4 plus 1 damage. Since these are all separate instances of damage, they will each force their own concentration check on a target who is concentrating on a spell. And since we have Mage Slayer, those checks are at disadvantage. So basically, that's a 1st level spell slot for 3 disadvantage concentration checks on a target of our choice. What are the odds that the target is going to pass 3 concentration checks at disadvantage? Now, at Sorcerer level 2, we get Font of Magic and Meta Magic, so we can now start to augment our spell casting. Now, none of the meta magic options say that they are limited to your sorcerer spells, so we can even use these to augment our warlock pact magic spells. The first and most obvious one that I want to pick up is Quicken Spell. When you cast a spell that has a casting time of an action, you can spend 2 sorcery points to change the casting time to a bonus action for this casting. You can't modify a spell in this way if you've already cast a level 1+ spell on the current turn. Nor can you cast a level 1+ spell on this turn after modifying a spell in this way. We already have the best cantrip in the game in our arsenal, Agonizing Blast, modified Eldritch Blast. So with this meta magic, we can cast it twice in a round for a total of 4d10 plus 12 possible damage. And since we have a few good concentration spells, Shadow Blade, Darkness, even Hex possibly, let's go ahead and take Extended Spell. When you cast a spell that has a duration of 1 minute or longer, you can spend 1 sorcery point to double its duration to a maximum duration of 24 hours. If the affected spell requires concentration, you have advantage on the saving throw you make to maintain that concentration. An extra minute with our Shadow Blade is going to be really good for long combat encounters, so I love using this on that. Also, you can use it on Darkness to keep it around a little longer, potentially to set up an ambush or something along those lines. Next, at Sorcerer level 3, Character level 8, we're going to get our Sorcerer subclass, Aberrant Sorcery. The first feature this gives us is Telepathic Speech. This is basically just the Awakened Mind feature from Warlock a second time, but this one's got a shorter duration. However, since both of these features can only be used on 1 creature at a time, but they are separate features, we can now have 2 telepathic links going simultaneously with 2 creatures. So that's kind of nice. At sorcerer level 4, character level 9, we're going to get another ability score improvement. And I want to pick up the Shadow Touched feat. Increase your Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma score by 1 to a maximum of 20. Choose one first level spell from the Illusion or Necromancy schools of magic. You always have that spell and invisibility prepared. You can cast each of these spells without expending a spell slot. Once you cast either of these spells in this way, you can't cast that spell in this way again until you finish a long rest. You can also cast these spells using spell slots you have of the appropriate level. The spell's spellcasting ability is the ability increased by this feat. This is my favorite way to get a Paladin Smite on a non-Paladin character. We can pick up the Wrathful Smite Necromancy spell with this feature, letting us, as a bonus action, add 1d6 necrotic damage per spell level to a melee attack, and force a Wisdom save or inflict the target with fear. Now, we could have gone with the Eldritch Smite invocation if we wanted a Smite option on this character, but since our Warlock spell slots are so limited, I would rather save them for casting Shadowblade and then use these Sorcerer spell slots to cast Wrathful Smite and also get that fear on the target as well. So this is pretty fitting for our Nightmare character. When we land a hit with our Shadowblade, we can pump the damage and we can terrify that poor little spellcaster all at the same time. Bump our Charisma to 18 with this feat for the +4 modifier. Sorcerer level 5, character level 10 gets us 3rd level Sorcerer spell slots, so we can now cast our counter spell more often. Sorcerer level 6 gets us another subclass feature. This time it's Psychic Defenses. You have resistance to psychic damage, and you have advantage on saving throws to avoid or end the charmed or frightened condition. Resistance is really nice. We already have advantage on saving throws against spells, but if the charmed or frightened condition comes from something besides spells, like a dragon's frightful presence, this feature is going to come in handy. We also get Psionic Sorcery, which enhances the way that we cast our Sorcerer subclass spells. I'm not super into any of them right now. There's some, fitting ones like Mind Sliver for our aesthetic, but I don't want to spend too much time on them. Let me know in the comments if you have some good uses for those subclass spells, though. And finally, Sorcerer level 7, character level 12 gets us our 4th level Sorcerer spell slots, even more spell slots for casting Counterspell, and for upcasting Magic Missile and Wrathful Smite. So, these Sorcerer levels gave us some cool new tricks to add to our arsenal against spellcasters. We get the Silvery Barb spell to force rerolls on successful saving throws. We get the Magic Missile spell to almost guarantee breaking through somebody's concentration. We get Quicken spell for a burst of range damage, and we get the Wrathful Smite spell for a burst of melee damage. So we've picked up some features that enhance all of the things we're already good at. Now, let's head back into Warlock for the rest of the build to enhance our Great Old One subclass power. Warlock 6 through 12, we're going to pick up Clairvoyant Combatant, Eldritch Spear, an ability score improvement, the Life Drinker invocation, the Eldritch Hex feature, the Thought Shield feature, the Devouring Blade invocation, and an ability score improvement. Alright, last stretch here. Warlock level 6, character level 13, we are getting the Clairvoyant Combatant feature. When you form a telepathic bond with a creature using your Awakened Mind, you can force that creature to make a Wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC. On a failed save, the creature has disadvantage on attack rolls against you, and you have advantage on attack rolls against that creature for the duration of the bond. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest, unless you expend a Pact Magic spell slot, no action required, to restore your use of it. I love this. We are already using our Awakened Mind to torment enemies, and now we can give a mechanical benefit to that as well. Make sure to use Silvery Barbs to make sure that that Wisdom save fails. Next, Warlock level 7 gets us another Eldritch invocation, and I wanted to take Eldritch Spear. Choose one of your known Warlock cantrips that deals damage and has a range of 10 or more feet. When you cast that spell, its range increases by a number of feet equal to 30 times your Warlock level. This is awesome for harassing fleeing enemies. Try as they might, they will never escape the range of our Eldritch Blast. And since our Awakened Mind / Clairvoyant Combatant has a range of 4 miles, it only makes sense that we extend our Eldritch Blast as far as possible. Next, at Warlock level 8, we are going to get an ability score improvement, and since our Charisma is sitting at that nice 18, let's bump it up to 20 for the +5 modifier. Character level 16, Warlock level 9 gets us another Eldritch invocation, and we're going to pick up Life Drinker. Once per turn, when you hit a creature with your packed weapon, you can deal an extra 1d6 necrotic, psychic, or radiant damage. Additionally, you can expend and roll one of your hit point dice to regain a number of hit points equal to the result plus your Constitution modifier. This is sort of like a continuation of our Wrathful Smite spell, letting us add some extra damage to a melee hit once per turn, except this one can also be used to heal us, so this is pretty cool. Warlock level 10, character level 17 grants us 2 subclass features, Eldritch Hex and Thought Shield. First off, Eldritch Hex. Your alien patron grants you a powerful curse. You always have the Hex spell prepared. When you cast Hex and choose an ability, the target also has disadvantage on saving throws of the chosen ability for the duration of the spell. This is super awesome for landing those important save or suck spells. Combine it with Silvery Barbs, and you are making them roll at disadvantage, and if they pass, they're going to have to roll again. Really great for guaranteeing those land. Also, we get Thought Shield. Your thoughts can't be read by telepathy or other means unless you allow it. You also have resistance to psychic damage, and whenever a creature deals psychic damage to you, that creature takes the same amount of damage that you take. So we already have resistance to psychic damage, but the damage reflect is pretty unique and very cool. Finally, at Warlock level 12, character level 19, we get our final Eldritch Invocation, and we are going with Devouring Blade. This is going to give us 2 extra attacks with our packed weapon. So we can now make 3 attacks on our attack action. Since we now have 5th level packed magic spell slots, our Shadow Blade is doing 4d8 damage per hit. 3 attacks at 4d8 damage is pretty solid, not to mention Life Drinker for another d6 and Wrathful Smite for another d6 per spell slot level that we want to drop in that. And we also get an ability score improvement at this level. And we can now take an epic boon feat since this is character level 19. We are going to go with the Boon of the Night Spirit. Increase one ability score of your choice by 1 to a maximum of 30. While within dim light or darkness, you can give yourself the invisible condition as a bonus action. The condition ends on you immediately after you take an action, a bonus action, or a reaction. While within dim light or darkness, you have resistance to all damage except psychic and radiant. We love being in darkness thanks to our Shadow Blade and our Devil's Sight, but giving ourselves extra resistance inside darkness is very nice. This feat said that you have resistance to all damage except psychic and radiant, but we already have resistance to psychic, so really it's just radiant that's going to be hurting us at this point. With the Boon of the Night Spirit, we're going to increase our charisma by +1 to 21. Next, at sorcerer level 8, we're going to get another ability score improvement, and we're going to use that on another epic boon. This time it's the Boon of Spell Recall. Increase your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma by +1 to a maximum of 30. Whenever you cast a spell with a level 1 through 4 spell slot, roll a d4. If the number rolled is the same as the spell's level, the slot isn't expended. Most of our spell slots are 4th level or lower, at least all of our sorcerer spell slots are. So a chance to get those back is going to go a long way. And that's the build. So this ended up being a pretty well-rounded character, capable of defending themselves against spells, thanks to our species magic resistance, the Guarded Mind feature from Mage Slayer, and the Lucky feat. We're also good at dealing damage at range, thanks to our modified Eldritch Blast with Agonizing Blast and Eldritch Spear, plus the Quicken spell meta magic is going to let us cast that Eldritch Blast twice per turn, which is a pretty massive damage boost. But we're not only good at range, we can also deal damage in melee with our Pact of the Blade Shadow Blade with 1 and 2 extra attacks thanks to Thirsting Blade and eventually Devouring Blade. We can even add extra damage to those hits with both Life Drinker and the Wrathful Smite spell. And most importantly, we are more than capable of thwarting enemy spellcasting attempts using our Mage Slayer feat, which gets multiplied thanks to spells like Eldritch Blast and Magic Missile. And then, of course, we have the counter spell on top of that to shut down casters before they even get their spells going. Along that same vein, we also have ways of making sure that our spells land through the use of Silvery Barbs, Clairvoyant Combatant, and the Eldritch Hex feature. I'd say the only weakness with this build is armor class. With only a +2 dexterity and only proficiency in light armor, we're probably going to be sitting around a 14 to 15 armor class, depending if we want to use mage armor. That's pretty low, but we can always pick up shield and sorcerer to give ourselves a little boost. But really, we're not here to defend ourselves against melee attacks. We're here to defend ourselves against spell casting, and at that, we definitely excel. So, thanks for checking out this week's video. Let me know what you thought of the build in the comments down below. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts. This is another evil sort of nightmare creature that we've built here today, maybe fit for an evil campaign or possibly for an enemy. If you DMs out there are looking for somebody to hunt down your group's spellcasters, let me know in the comments below how you would use this build. Subscribe for more Dungeons & Dragons content, and come back every Monday for another original character build. Alright, thanks everybody. I'll see y'all next week.